Okay, this is lesson 35 and we're looking at perfect competition. The first thing, the most important thing to remember about perfect competition is that this is just a yardstick. So what that means is we compare other forms of competition to perfect competition because perfect competition has certain characteristics that make it a really good comparison as to how well or badly how well or badly firms in that market structure are doing. Okay, so firstly, perfect competition says that all the products are exactly the same, so homogeneous products, which is obviously pretty crazy. We use it as a yardstick. We assume that there are loads and loads of buyers and sellers, that everybody has perfect knowledge. There are no barriers to entry. Now that means that there is complete freedom of entry and exit into that firm. And finally is that firms aim to maximize profits, which is is the assumption that we make, even though we just done in lesson 34, there are loads of different objectives for a firm. So this could be a diagram of short run equilibrium. So this is the demand and the supply curve for the whole market. This features to the demand curve for the firm, which is flat. The reason why it's flat is because all the products are exactly the same. So therefore, if you raise your price slightly and everyone else keeps theirs the same, you won't sell any products at all. So in the short run here, you're making a profit, because the marginal cost is equal to the marginal revenue is there. Therefore, that's the average cost, so that you are making supernormal profits in this instance. D is equal to AR, which is equal to MR. That is because you sell one good at 10 quid, you sell two goods at 20 quid, three goods at 30 quid. So each time you're selling each good for 10 quid, so 1 times 10 is 10, 2 times 10 is 20, 3 times 10 is 30. So the marginal revenue is always the same if you go back to previous lessons in terms of working out the marginal revenue. So in perfect competition, the demand curve is always flat. What I'm going to do after this session is just a quick session on how you draw this diagram here. I've just drawn it up already, and then I'll show you how you go out and draw and construct that diagram. Basically, you've got demand and supply curves. That's for the whole market. And we start off at this place here. So this is marginal cost, marginal revenue. And at that point there, you're clearly making a profit because the price you're selling each good at is P1 and the cost of making each good goes to there. So we're making this area here as a profit. I'm not going to write it on there, otherwise it's going to create complications on the diagram. Okay, so what happens then when you've got a supernormal profit? Firms will be attracted into that industry, so more firms come into the industry and we move down to this place here. Okay, now what happens there is you're still making a profit because the average cost of producing that good is that much and the price you're selling the good at is that much. So you're still making abnormal profit. So what's going to happen again is more firms will be attracted into that industry and you end up at that place there. And at that point, you are making normal profit. So that will mean that no firms will be attracted into that industry. Now that's really important because, as I've already stated before in previous lessons, there are 3 points that work here. MC equals MR is profit maximization. Fine. We've got the bottom of the ATC curve, which is productive efficiency, which means we're getting maximum output from minimum input. And finally, we've got price is equal to marginal cost, and that is the point of allocative efficiency. So the value that we place on that good is equal to the cost of producing that good. So that is why perfect competition is good, because there's loads of competition. Everybody's producing the same product, free entry and exit, so it allocates resources really, really well, even though it's obviously very much theory based. So the whole idea of economics is you have scarce resources to satisfy unlimited wants. So this is what perfect competition does. It's a form of structure that will satisfy those needs. So if you're making supernormal profits, more firms will be attracted into that industry. We eventually end up at these 2 points here, productive and allocative efficiency, which is really, really good. So the goods and services that are produced are exactly what consumers want. That's really important. And the marginal cost curve shows the value of resources needed to produce a particular product. Right, so in the long run, in perfect competition, this is quite a handy diagram to always draw in an exam. We end up here, and this conforms to the idea of Productive efficiency, really, really good, and also additive efficiency, both occur there. However, does perfect competition mean that we have reached nirvana in terms of market structures? No, it doesn't, as I'm going to explain in a second or two, because we haven't taken economies of scale into account. And of course, if you've got lots of small firms competing with each other, then you can't really achieve economies of scale, which means that you may be able to lower the price, which will benefit the consumer, create more additive efficiency. And we also have not taken into account externalities. And we know if you want to maximize your social welfare, you want to be at the point where marginal social benefit is equal to marginal social cost. This industry may be giving off lots of negative externalities. So this is perfect competition. In a second or two, I'm going to tell you how you draw this diagram, which is really important. And I'm actually going to compare that to a monopoly that achieves economies of scale. Okay, this is still lesson 35, and what I want to do now is to show you how you draw the perfect competition in the long run diagram. Now there is a really easy way of drawing it. You just do this, right? Which is pretty straightforward. You draw a straight line, ATC and MC going through the bottom, all the points coincide together. Now that's a way of doing it, but the reason why I prefer the other one is because you can use that diagram and then write about it and explain the whole concept of perfect competition. But initially the diagram is quite hard to draw. Now there are two parts to this diagram, which you saw in the previous session. So we start here. So the first thing you want to draw is two separate diagrams, and you want to put price here, quantity here, price and quantity. Okay. Then you want to draw a demand line all the way down here. All right. And then you want to draw three supply lines on here. So call that S1, S2 and S3. And then you want to draw dots going along where those lines cross. Okay, and then draw a straight line across there, and then draw another line here. Remember, you're going to be doing all of this in the exam. Another line there, and finally you're going to draw this one here. Remembering, of course, at all times that perfect competition is just a yardstick. We can use perfect competition as a comparison with other forms of competition. Right, so that looks pretty weird there, but what happens here? And then when you draw the average total cost curve, make sure it just touches this line here, because then you're going to be okay. So we draw the average total cost line there, all the way up through there, and call that ATC. So with these lines here, they are AR is equal to MR. You can call them AR1, MR1, AR2, MR2, AR3, MR3. All right. And then we also want to draw the marginal cost line also going through the bottom of the ATC line. So we do that, and that's the MC line there. Okay. So this is perfect competition where there's free entry and exit. Every product's exactly the same. It's built upon certain unrealistic assumptions. So we start with the first case with supply and demand up there, and we end up in this situation here, and if we call that Q1. Now at this point here, we're clearly making supernormal profits. So that's the average cost of making each good, that's the price we sell them at, so we're making supernormal profits. So therefore what happens then is the supply line may move to the right, and once the supply line moves to the right, we move to there, which is Q2. Okay, so suppliers move from S1 to S2, and prices still fallen, but we're still making supernormal profits. That's the price on there, and that's the average cost. So therefore the supply moves again, and we eventually move to S3, and that gives us Q3. And we've also got P1, P2, P3 on there. So hey presto, we go. We have shown that in perfect competition, because of freedom of entry and exit, that when a firm is making supernormal profits, other firms will come into the industry. Therefore, the demand curve for each individual firm will fall until this point here when you are making normal profits. And at that point there, you are productively efficient, you're additively efficient, and you are also at the point of profit maximization, which is also one of the other assumptions that you make. Okay, so that's perfect competition in the long run. The problem with perfect competition in the long run is two things which we did last time. It doesn't show for the fact if you have economies of scale. And secondly, it assumes that there are no externalities involved, because you want to get to the point of MSB is equal to MSC, and economic efficiency is the utilization of scarce resources to maximize economic welfare. MSC is equal to MSB. Now on this one, to make it easier, right, I'm assuming you've got constant returns to scale. So your average cost curve would in fact look like that. And if your average cost curve looks like that, that will be the same as the MSC curve. Okay, so for this diagram, use this. Otherwise it's going to be hard to draw. The other bit is we need to have a big distance between the average cost curves. So when we come to draw it, you'll see what I mean in a second. When we come to draw it, we've got the demand line going down there, D equals AR, and we've got the marginal revenue curve twice as steep. Now when we draw it, draw one point up there, okay, and the other point has got to be drawn all the way down here. Even then I've only just about made it, because when I draw a price line down there, I'm only just to the right of that point. So maybe what I can do is make the MR curve slightly less steep, cheating a bit. Okay, so I'm now going to draw this one, monopoly with economies of scale. Once again, you want to draw this pretty big. I'll say at least maybe 3/4 of a page. It just makes it easier. So draw that there. So you've got price here. Once again, remember you're under exam conditions. Examiners love this because you draw a diagram and then you talk about it and analyze it, and you're going to get top marks, even if you're pretty illiterate. So when we draw the demand line down there, and then we draw the MR curve. Right, and what I said, maybe want to make it a bit like that, okay? So that is the MR line there. So, okay, so we want two of these lines on here, AC equals MC. So draw one all the way up here, MC is equal to AC. Now it gets a little bit fiddly at this point. Right, what we say is a monopoly will always produce a MR equals MC, right? So you draw up this point here. So that is the price of monopoly, and that is the quantity output in monopoly. Okay, but however, if there is a competitive market, call that PC, right? Now they will produce at the point where price is equal to marginal cost. We've just shown it on here. So that is QPC. All right, so that's price competitive, price monopoly. Now what's the basic argument against a monopoly is that they will be productively inefficient and also additively inefficient, and the consumer's better off because there's a bigger amount of consumer surplus on there than there is a monopoly. What we then draw in this line that's not particularly straight, okay, is you draw a line all the way down here, and we say, okay, so what happens if the monopoly can achieve that with economies of scale? So we've now got economies of scale on there as well. So what happens then is, when we draw the price on there, okay, goes like that. So this is monopoly, perfect competition, and now this is monopoly with econ of scale, and this is price monopoly with econ of scale. Which one is better for the consumer? Well, quite clearly, a monopoly with economies of scale is much better for the consumer than a firm in perfect competition because the price is much lower. So therefore we have created more allocative efficiency. So therefore we can then say a monopoly is better than perfect competition, particularly as well if you can also get dynamic efficiency. So a monopoly will makes profits, will undertake research and development and produce better products. A good example of that is clearly Apple. Okay, now the only people who are going to beat Apple are those who can beat them by producing a slightly cheaper product, e.g. Samsung, or if someone comes up with a completely new product on top of that. But there you go. So I've drawn two diagrams there. That is perfect competition in the long run. So which form of competition is better? Well, this is better because it's productively and allocatively efficient. Okay? However, no, it's not. A monopoly is better because it achieves economies of scale and therefore price is lower. And secondly, a monopoly can also be dynamically efficient. Examiners love that as a diagram. They're both correctly drawn, a little bit of analysis under each one. Relate that to the real world. Okay, perfect competition is really just a yardstick and doesn't follow those principles. And monopoly could be much better because it could be dynamically efficient. And even though there's a lack of competition in the long term, other firms may be attracted to that market to make the same profits. And if they come into that market, they may produce a new business model, e.g. Virgin and its online bank or something like that. I'm trying to think of other firms now, I can't off the top of my head. So therefore, monopoly may well be better than perfect competition as long as it doesn't completely abuse the market because they are a price maker within elastic demand, therefore they can raise the price. Grade A star at A level.